Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Coming Out Stories from India series. Coming out is a term primarily used in the LGBT community when a queer person shares about their sexual orientation, usually with friends and family. Nicola and I decided to launch these coming out stories from India to ensure we all work together in changing the current narrative. The last few years, since my own coming out, I have been looking for role models, positive ones in particular, stories that can help me in my own journey. Guess what? There was hardly any, and if at all, not in depth enough. There's a common thread running across the narratives. The journey has been very challenging for many of us. However, we also discover that not all stories are that of pain, suffering, and trauma either. Our coming out stories from India started taking shape as we started discovering that we all need good role models to bring to our audience real people, real lived experiences, real stories, keeping in mind, however, the unique complexities of India. Hopefully, these stories will help pave the way for those who are in any phase of their coming out journeys. I'm Raga Olga D'silva, or Totally Out Now, as you know me. Our guest today is joining us all the way from down under, Australia. A recently published author, her story has many dimensions to it. From growing up in Kolkata to making her way to Australia, finding love, finding freedom, and living her truth. Please join me in welcoming Nerissa Trindade. Nerissa, hello.
Hi, Raga. Lovely to be on this conversation with you. Thank you so much for having me.
Wonderful to see you. And I really miss that part of the world. As you know, that we lived in New Zealand for many years. So
Yeah,
hopefully someday we will meet somewhere in
that is
person.
the dream. Yes.
So good. I'm so pleased to have you on a show because your story is very interesting, and I haven't read your book yet, which I aim to do soon. And it just kind of, but whatever I've seen online, the interactions you've had with me and your friends and family, I feel what an interesting journey. So let's start at the start, Nerissa. Tell me about your growing up years. How was it for you? And just set the scene for us.
Sure, happy to. So, Raga, I was born, like you said, in Kolkata. Yeah, it used to be called Calcutta then. So I think I like to call it Calcutta. Back in the early 1980s. And I was born into a Christian family, of strong faith, into kind of a regular family setup. I was born into the Anglo-Indian community. For those that might not know what an Anglo-Indian community is, it's I think the easiest way to explain it is like my great 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 ancestors were part British and part Indian. They got together many generations later. I arrived. So I was born into an Anglo-Indian family. Pretty kind of normal kind of family. Mom, dad, sister. I've got a younger sister, and growing up. Yeah, that's the one. Growing up, the early years that I remember, and I talk about this in the book as well. I was a very outgoing kid, Raga. I was like, very confident, very outgoing. I loved being, we used to have. I remember we used to go to this as part of church, this thing called Sunday school, and we would do like little plays and skits, and I would always be given like the main roles, and I'd be up in the front on stage, very outgoing. Like I didn't very carefree. Full of fun. I didn't feel like there was anything different about me. That whole concept didn't exist. So childhood, as I remember it, was lovely. It was great. I was very playful. Like I say, my mom was pregnant, she always wanted a kid like Dennis the Menace, and she got me. So it was very much
So
yeah.
when you say child, so when you say childhood, you're talking about your formative years. You're talking about the first 10 years.
Just talking even before that, maybe like till about 7, like maybe
Okay.
5, 7, when I started going to school, then things slowly started changing.
So did you go to a co-ed school or an all-girls school?
No, I went to an all-girls school, a convent, run by very strict Irish nuns. So, and I think school, Raga, for me was the first time I understood difference, because I think until you go into that kind of environment, when you're a kid in your home, as everyone celebrates you irrespective of you being a bit different or not. You're a child and everyone celebrates that. But I think once I started going into school, early on, I realized, we were not all the same. We were all quite different. And at that point, I realized that if those differences were seen as something that, the grown-ups and parents and teachers accepted, then it was celebrated. But if those differences were seen as something being out of the norm, then, that was not accepted. And that kind of understood.
I'm going to keep coming back to this, Nerissa, because when you're talking about your 7 years old in school, and I'm sure you don't have this kind of thoughts, these thoughts.
Right.
These are thoughts that come to us in reflection. So my suggestion is put yourself back into that little child and tell me, how was it as a child? How did you feel things were different when you say? What does that
Absolutely.
mean?
Absolutely, yeah. No, great question. Because, yeah, as a kid, you don't have this. There's no understanding of, sexual orientation or even attraction. Like, none of that exists, right? So if I talk about, very early on in school or even at home, it was things like how I wanted to present. So I very much loved to dress in shorts, in t-shirts. I was the kind. I wanted all like the high back sneakers, and I would be out on the field playing all the time. Whereas, girls my age then would be, Barbie dolls were like this big thing. And I remember my sister having, like, she was fascinated with Barbie dolls, right? And I just couldn't wrap my head around why, like, what was so entertaining about that, I had a little He-Man, and I remember I used to run around with that little sword, and I used to shout, like, I have the power. And so it was subtle differences like this. And I'm not saying, playing with different toys necessarily indicates things, but it was more around the way I chose to present myself, in the clothes. And I think when you're a kid, I think that's the first signs of kind of, you wanting to be you.
Yeah, so
And
self-expression, right? We're
correct,
talking about self-expression. And
absolutely.
in that time, I'm just very curious to know that if you are the older sibling, and I'm sure your parents took you shopping, right?
Oh yeah,
It's not that you went and bought a He-Man or a Barbie or shorts for yourself. You're a gender girl. So
that's right.
right, yeah. So did your parents encourage you, or did they fight it when you said I want a He-Man instead of a Barbie doll, or that you wanted to buy shorts instead of a skirt, say?
Yeah. Look, I don't think the toys were such an issue, so to speak, but definitely, I mean, the dressing aspect was fought a lot, and I struggled a lot with that because, we also had growing up, we had cousins that would visit, during festive seasons and things, and all of us were kind of, three of us were similar age, and then two younger ones, and we'd all be dressed like in the same colors, in the same outfits, all in the same matching dresses. So whilst they liked it, I didn't. I hated being in like those frilly dresses, but I thought that was it. I thought that's what we all had to do. But it really, it didn't sit right with me. And even things like, as you grow older, you get your ears pierced and you start wearing earrings. I didn't want to do it, but I thought that's what everyone had to do. And whenever I fought it, like, I constantly felt like I was being forced to fit into this box, this, which is like, what a good Indian Christian girl should be, or so I was told. That you have to constantly be fitting into this. And the more that I was pushed into that raga, the more they tried to make me fit in, the more I found that turmoil inside me, like struggling with that. I was like, why can't I just wear the shorts? Why can't I just, and I did to a certain extent, as much as possible. But then you're always hit by that, like, I think in your circles as friends, it's okay, but you're going out with family, you're going to a family function. So you have to dress and present as the family wants you to present. Now, I'd be like, I just want to wear pants and a shirt. And no, you can't be a young girl in that. What will people think? And from a very young age, I had short hair, not this short, this is much shorter, but I've always had short-ish hair. And even that was not acceptable. How does, back then it was like, well, Indian girls don't have short hair. You
Yeah,
have to,
you had a boy cut, right? If
yeah,
you had a
yeah,
short hair, it was a boy cut. So you were
correct.
taking on a boy's haircut. But tell me, I'm still interested in understanding about the feeling that you felt inside when you said that you started feeling that you were different. So
Yeah.
what is that feeling that you felt, and around what age did you start feeling that?
I think it was more towards kind of maybe like high school, when you start talking about crushes and, girls having, typically about kind of year 8, 9, kind of that age, kind of, yeah, high schoolish. And, you start having crushes on boys. And, I like guys, but I never like felt anything towards them, and I think when all of my friends started having these crushes, I was like, well, if I don't have one, then I'm not fitting into what should be happening for me. So then there was this guy that, I really got along with. So I thought, okay, maybe that is what it's supposed to feel like to have a crush. So I said, okay, I have a crush on this guy. But there was no real connection when and back then you don't know, right? But now when you experience and you think back, you can see that the feelings were different, and it's hard to describe because you don't have a word back then, like the whole concept of being gay or attracted to same sex. At that age, it doesn't exist. But it's like, why am I feeling this? Why am I wanting to hang out with my girlfriends more than with the guys? Like if we all went out and the guys didn't show up, I'd be like, okay, big deal, they're not here. But I'd be really wanting to have my girlfriends there, like not girlfriends like we were partners, but the friends that were girls. So in ways like that, it started coming out. Sorry, I used the word coming out as a pun, but it started showing up in those ways. And of course, for me, the whole dressing thing was very different. Even, Raga, I got bullied in school. I was bullied in school where, we talk about the term gay not being used or not knowing it. But when it came to bullying, it was a way that it could be used as a form of being attacked, because back then it was considered as, you couldn't be gay. It was something so illegal, so wrong. Being in an all girls Catholic school, we were taught that if you're gay, you go to hell.
Okay.
Like,
So I'm going to ask you this question. What timeline are we talking about? Talking about the 80s, 90s,
this would have been kind of early 90s now.
early 90s?
Yeah.
And early 90s, the term gay was not really spoken about, right? I mean, it was for
Huh.
men, it was
Hmm.
homos, as we say.
Hmm.
And so when was in school, did other people bring that term to you?
Yes, they did. So there was a girl in my class, and she didn't really like me because I was kind of close to her best friend. Like, she must have been jealous or something, and she would call my house. And, back then there were no mobile phones, it was all landlines. So she would call the landline, and if anyone picked up, she'd go, she'd yell down the phone, like, you're gay, your mom knows you're gay, your dad knows you're gay. Um, and back then, I didn't identify even as being gay. I didn't identify, I was like, why are people thinking this about me? Why are they saying this? Why is this term being associated with me when it's not how I identify? But it terrified me. It scared me, because then I started thinking, well, what about me is giving out these signals? Like yes, I'm fighting it, but I'm still doing what they're telling me to do. I'm wearing the dresses. I'm doing stuff. But it got worse when it led to the principal of the school. And, again, there were no mobile phones. So, like, I was close to a girl in school, and, we used to write like notes to each other. And I don't know who picked it up, but the principal found out. And one day she called me into the office, and I had this note in my hand, and she sat me down, and she made me read it aloud to her. And that was embarrassing, terrifying, overwhelming, all of that, and in that moment, there was nothing in that note that was explicit. It was just, two friends that were close. But she made me feel like that was so wrong. And in that moment, she told me that everything about me was wrong. The way I walked, the way I stood, the way I interacted, the way I presented at school, everything was wrong. And she basically said that if I didn't change, like if I didn't change the way I presented, the way I was talking, even standing in assembly, the way I was standing was wrong. And if I didn't change this, then she would call my parents and she would expel me from school. And at that time, now I'm quite confident and all of that. But at that time, this was not me. At that time, I was a terrified teenager. I was so scared because I was caught between, growing up that time, school and home are meant to be your safe places.
Yeah.
And I was caught at a place where I couldn't be me at school. That was my out. And then if I came home, I couldn't tell them that I couldn't be me at school. So it was like, who do I even confide in? And even if I have to say something to my friends, who do I say it to? And what do I say? If they say, why are you being bullied, what do I say? So it was very isolating, and I didn't want to be expelled, of course. So I tried to change. I tried to stand a certain way at assembly and put my head a certain way like the other girls had it. And the more I tried, the more I stood out.
Oh,
And because
oh.
of that, sorry.
I said, gosh, I'm just, these experiences that we've been through just gives me goosebumps. And all of
Yeah.
us seem to have similar kind of experiences. You said, I'm sorry I've interrupted you, but you said
No,
that
no.
school and home should be a safe place for us. And what is coming out from these stories is that the school isn't a safe place for us in India, sadly. And I think sensitization needs to start there at school level. Imagine your principal telling you that there's something you have to change, that's something wrong with you, or you'll be expelled. I
That's
mean,
right.
that's a threat for a teenager. It can change your entire, life. So tell me why you're
Absolutely.
going through this at school. And I understand that you're now struggling with your own self. Somebody else from the outside is telling you who you are, which you have not identified yourself with. How was it at home? What was happening at home? Did your mom, like, or your parents, put any pressure on you?
Look, my mom has always been my kind of support system, but I don't think she always let me express myself the way I did. When you say, when you went out shopping, were you allowed to buy stuff? I think my mom always wanted to, in some way, as much as she could at that time, support me. But my father was a completely different story, and that just clashed every time. Like, it was just not allowed at home. And because of that, because he tried to suppress how I wanted to present, I would get more angry, he would get more angry, and it would just escalate every time. So home wasn't a place that I could share this with. It was a place I could hide. Like, so a lot of my teenagers I used to spend in my room with the lights off and just on my own, because I was like, it's better not to be seen and heard. If I can't be seen and heard the way I'm comfortable being seen and heard, then I'd rather not be seen or heard.
So,
So I
so,
would,
so your mother was all right with this. I mean, I won't say like she was accepting, didn't know, as mothers in India
yeah,
do. They don't really talk
yeah,
about it. They observe, they will make certain comments, they will show their love through action, right? Or
yeah,
acceptance through action. What
yeah.
about your younger sibling at that time? Were you
Well,
able to speak with her? Did she, sorry, and also another question is, she went, I'm assuming, to the same school that you did. So was there a repercussion on her as well?
yeah, I think our relationship, Raga, at that point really drifted apart. And I think looking back now, obviously at that time I didn't really understand why, but as writing the book and reflecting, when you reflect back, as you would know, you realize. And I think growing up, I saw my sister as a reflection of everything I wasn't. She wasn't being penalized for the way she wanted to dress. She ticked all those boxes that I never ticked. Of no fault of hers. Just, she was the good Indian girl, and she ticked all of those boxes. So it became a thing as to, why is everything she doing right, and why is everything I'm doing wrong when I'm not technically doing anything wrong? I'm just being me. So our relationship was quite strained at that time. Like, it was very much a struggle. And because I feel really bad saying this, but because I was bullied through school and struggled so much, like, my anger and frustration got taken out on her because she was younger, you know so
So
she was the only.
you took it out on her, you think?
Yeah, because my growing up years, Raga, I was really angry. I was really frustrated, and that's what people got to see. Because people often see what comes out outside. They don't see the inside struggle. So because the inside struggle was so much, it often came out as frustration, as anger, as all of this repressed feelings of not being able to talk came out as this rebellious kid, constantly angry, constantly fighting, constantly wanting to, break the rules, and, always in trouble, always grounded. So, you know, it was my only way to take that anger out So we would have a lot of fights growing up, and she copped a lot of that, sadly, which I keep apologizing to her now every day before. I'm like, I'm so sorry. I was like that, but it was the only way out at that point.
So at what time did you just look inwards and said, maybe this is who I am, and accept yourself?
Oh, it didn't happen in India for me at all. It only happened years after I came to um, Australia. So I moved. So after undergrad, I came to Australia to do my postgrad. And I was in Australia, and I think Australia gave me the option to explore a little bit more of myself. Um, but again, I was terrified of being me, because then I knew being me would mean all of this thing about being gay would be associated, right? So I went completely the other way, right? I started wearing all the dresses. I started wearing heels. I put on all the makeup. I did everything because I thought if I could change everything that everybody wanted to change around me, because if that's the only thing that I could associate that was wrong with me, right? So I said, if I change everything about me that has caused so much problem growing up, then surely I should be okay. So I did all of that. I went to all the parties. I put on all the heels, the makeup, the lipstick, the hair products, the earrings, everything. And inside, nothing changed. And it just kept getting worse. And this thing kept coming back to me, what is this? And I remember I was turning 30. And I was like, come on, this is like, I've lived like this for far too long. I need to address this. And that's when I went into like a whole kind of self-discovery process, and it was a very dark time. And, I could have gone down paths that probably I wouldn't have been here now today.
I'll
But
talk. Sorry, park that thought. I want to just come back to your undergrad years now. So you were in India, you did your undergrad in India, and all those years you suppressed these feelings because of
oh,
the fear of what the word gay was and what people would say.
yeah, so I'd been with women in India. Um, but of course, none of them would ever talk to me about it. In that moment when it existed, and then when it finished, it was never discussed.
Okay.
Um,
I'm sorry. I'm going to keep asking you these questions. I'm
no,
sorry to
no,
interrupt so much, Narissa.
that's
Uh,
right.
when you said had been with women, I just want to understand that a little more. Were you mean meeting people for coffee? Or are you talking about
No,
an
no.
intimate relationship? Or are you talking about a relationship?
Yeah. Look, if I think about it now, looking back, in my definition, absolutely, it was a relationship. It was a lot more than just being friends. It was a physical relationship, and I think the first one was not much, and then you keep moving as you get older. The physical the amount you can be physical with someone kind of increases as you know more, right? As you get older. So of course relationships were there, things happen, but in India everything happens behind closed doors. You can be someone behind a closed door, and then when you open the door you can be someone completely different, right? And you exist in two lives. And it seems so strange to me now when I look back, that even being in that relationship with that person, when I look back now, of course it was a relationship, but even we didn't have the words to talk about it. Even we couldn't say to each other that this is what it means to be gay or to be attracted to the same person. And of course then that person moved on into a heterosexual relationship, all of that. So that later Raga played on me as well, to say, well, we've all done the same things and been in these same relationships, but they're all gone off and married, like in heterosexual relationships. So what is it about me that is not able to do that same thing? And I dated a guy as well, when I was in India, because I thought, that's what we should do. Everyone's having boyfriends, I should have a boyfriend too. But he was just one of the nicest guys ever, and we would hang out all the time. And I thought, well, if we're hanging out all the time anyway, then may as well have him as my boyfriend. Um, but it was never physical for me. Like there was no physical attraction. Yes, we'd drive around in each other's cars. We'll hang out the whole time. We got on like really well. If he was here, like I'd probably tie a Raki on him and be like, you can be my brother now. But so we really, really got along. But there was no physical attraction. So fast forward back to Australia when I was here. that's when I could kind of even, that's when I understood what it meant to be gay. In university, they had stuff going on. You go to Mardi Gras. I had a Mardi Gras parade, yeah. But my first Mardi Gras, again, the experience here, I was scared. I could not be me. And I was with a bunch of Indian friends at that time. And I said, if I'm here and if I kind of pretend to like this, then, they're gonna assume I'm gay. They're gonna think I'm gay. And back then, being gay was like, oh my God, like she's gay. It was like a big thing. It was never like, okay, do you want to talk about this? And, it was never seen like that. It was like being gay was like hot news, like gossip. So I was like, I don't, that's not me. I don't want to identify that. So I hid it for a long time until I couldn't hide it anymore, until I couldn't suppress this anymore, no matter what I did. And I said, well, I have to address it. And that's when I said, no, I've got to figure this out. And that's when I went on that really long journey of self-discovery, because I needed to know, Raga, at that point, that when I came out, when I said, this is who I am, even if everybody at that point rejected me, because that was entirely what I thought was going to happen, that if everybody rejected me at that point, then I needed to know that I could be okay with me, that I could love myself, that I could find space for myself. So, it was a long journey. And then I gave myself a personal milestone of turning 30. I was like, once you turn 30, you just have to do this. You have to do it. And again, I shut myself off from everything. My roommate at that time, flatmate at that time, thought like, I was really ill. Like, she thought, like, when I eventually came out to her, she was like, oh my God, I thought you had cancer or something. Like, it was because I'd completely shut down, wasn't talking to anyone. But finally I did it. I mustered up the courage. And even when deciding to come out, I had to think about who do I say this to? Now that I've figured it out, do I tell my mom? Do I tell my sister? Do I tell a friend? And eventually I told my sister. I picked up the phone. I mustered up the courage. I still remember standing on that balcony that day, terrified. I was like trembling. And I picked up the phone. I called her. She was luckily home that day. And I said, look, I have to tell you something. I don't know how you're going to react, but I just have to say it. And I just said, I'm gay. And as I said that, like, it just, all this emotion rushed up, and I just felt like, in that moment, I just felt like just liberated. Like, all this stuff that was sitting on me for like 30 years was like finally off. But I was still scared. I was like, what does her react? Like, I've said it, but what's her reaction going to be? And she said, in that moment, she just said, I accept you. She said, I accept you. And, for me, I get, as I'm saying this to you, I get goosebumps again, because I'm taken back to that moment almost a decade ago now. Almost a decade. Yeah. So she said, I accept you. And, after that, we had a lovely conversation. She asked questions, I asked questions, all of that. But the initial response that she gave me that day was, I accept you. And in an instant, she told me she loved me, she accepted me, that I belonged, that it was safe, and that she was my ally in that moment. And that gave me the courage to then say, okay, now I've got to tell my mom, because I'm very close to my mom. And then a week later, but then when my sister told me also, when I came out to her, she was, and I have to give my sister so much credit in that moment, Raga, because she was younger than me, right? She's still in India. So she's gone through an upbringing exactly like mine, no difference. But she had the maturity, the understanding, the love for me to say, I accept you. I'll be with you. And then she said, I'll support you, but I'm all the way here. You need someone there to support you. So she said, why don't you look up if there's, some kind of group or something you can go to. So I looked up here and I found a coming out group. And through that, I remember going there the first time and just crying. I was like, oh my God, I've just come out and I've got to tell my mom, and just sobbing. And I remember that Saturday, we decided to tell my mom. And I was sitting again, like in the ensuite of my bedroom, because my flatmate was home and I hadn't told them yet. So I was sitting there like on the toilet seat, like calling my mom and just crying. And I remember picking up the phone to her and I said, I'm so sorry. I have to tell you something. I'm sorry, I'm gay.
Gosh, and we have to say sorry for being gay. Imagine
I know.
that.
And now I know that I know absolute, because people ask me like, do you have to be sorry? And I know 100% like there's absolutely no need to apologize, and my mom validates that for me now every day as well. But I think back then you're apologizing for what society puts onto you as expectations, what. And my mom had never put these expectations onto me, but it's what you think of society wise and culturally. Like you're meant to get married, you're meant to get married to a man, and you're meant to wear the white dress and walk down the aisle, and it's all those things that you feel you have to apologize for. And my mom was, as lovely and as accepting. She just said, you don't have to be sorry. I accept you. I love you. You're who I raised you to be, and I support you. And she had a lot of questions, no doubt, which we then spoke about. And she took more time to come along that journey, but her initial response was, "I accept you." And then it was like, why, how, because I had been on that journey. So now I had to take my family on that journey as well. But yeah, the two most important people in my life at that point accepted me. So I feel very lucky and blessed.
Thank you, Nerissa, for sharing that. I just want to take this moment to share something with the audience. Two things. One is Mardi Gras. Nerissa made a comment about Mardi
Yeah.
Gras. Please know that it is like the Pride Parade, and it's a huge celebration in Australia. And I haven't attended one. That's on my bucket list as well, by the way.
We'll
I'd
go
love
together.
to. Yes, I'd love to. And the second bit is something I think the audience needs to understand, Nerissa, for all of us, the word acceptance. See, you lived your entire 30 years not accepting because of the internal homophobia, right? Because of what society puts on us.
Mm.
So it's wrong. It's you're going to be ridiculed. There's going to be abuse. There's going to be slurs put on you. So you're fighting that fight, but you're not living your truth. And then you finally tell the two people you love the most about who you are. You've accepted it, and you're saying that both the times you were crying and you were sobbing. Now imagine the pressure. And I'm just wanting the audience to just sit still for a minute and think, is this what you would do for your loved ones? If someone came up to you and said to you that they were gay, would you hold their hand or would you reject them? Think about this, because by the time the person has come to you, they've already been through a journey of fighting it within themselves. So it's very important. Narissa, what you shared today is very, very, it gives me goosebumps. I've had many people on the show, people sharing this story, and each time it makes me want to sob as well, because we need not have to go through this. We don't need to go through this. Our families need to understand that it is not really a choice. It is who
Mm.
we are, you
Mm.
know. And I'm going to come back, Narissa. I needed a little bit of break to just settle for listening to your
Sorry,
story.
that was.
No, 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 it's important. This is the part that is most important in our conversation, because this is the part that people need to sit back and listen to and understand that it is real. It's not Bollywood. We're not
Mm.
doing melodrama. It's not a script. It's not a book you're reading. It's a real story of a lived experience. But tell me,
Yeah.
when you came out to yourself, basically, before after, and you've come out to
Mm.
your family now. So these are two things run in parallel.
Mm.
How did you deal with it? And what happened? Did you get rid of that makeup and all the external presentation that wasn't you? Let's start with that.
Yeah. Wow, that was so liberating, Raka. Like once I came out, like once I had said the words, I am gay, and that whole pressure of what I'd been living in for 30 years, that realization of that this is who I am. I no longer have to pretend. Yes, I gave away, I think, 15 something pairs of shoes, heels or something. I'm like, I was like, that's it, it's gone. Like for me, coming out of the closet was literally coming out, like getting a new closet and never going back in, right? And through that, like I remember after that, my mom came to Australia for Christmas. And at Christmas, like I said, we'd always go for we'd always go out, like for mass and all of that. And your mom was like, so are you going to wear a dress? And I was like, no, I'm not. This is what I'm going to wear. I haven't done all of this to go back and live that life. This is not me. And it seems like such a simple conversation that, like, why am I justifying what I need to wear to my mom? But in that moment, that was me standing up again for me and saying, no, this is who I am. This is how I present. This is how I feel comfortable. This is how, and even after coming out, Raga, because of the years and what I went through, I had lost all my confidence. The person that is talking to you today is not the person that was even here, even when I came out. I was still, it took me a long time after coming out as well to rebuild that confidence, to find my voice again. I couldn't speak up. I was so shy. I would sit in a meeting room and I would know the answer to a question, but I wouldn't have the voice to speak up because I was so fearful of, how would I stand? How would I sit? Would someone think something of me? And all of these outside external factors shut me down internally. So it took me a long time to rebuild all of that, my self-esteem, my confidence, to finally be able to, now I'm like, yeah, whatever. This is me, you take it, you leave it. This is how I roll. So yeah, it's absolutely liberating.
Fantastic. It reminds me of my favorite quote that I keep saying, that closets are for clothes, not to hide your
100%.
truth. It's totally, we have, I don't know, I always say that I think the Indian families in particular, or people from the community, must have the biggest closet ever. How much do we hide, right, on a day to day basis? And, mental health. People don't
Yes.
realize that when you hide, whatever that you're hiding, the impact it has on our mental health. It shapes you, right? I mean,
Yeah.
if you're hiding, you are in isolation, you are lonely inside, you have dark thoughts, like you said, there are anger issues. Like, how do you talk about things like that? How do you express yourself? A lot of
So
people
true.
express it through anger. A lot of people express it through other ways, substance abuse, as you know. and
Yeah,
and it just doesn't happen. It happens because there are reasons for it to happen. So my
absolutely.
friends, yeah, my friends watching, remember, coming out is a journey, but it doesn't have to be that difficult. I'm an example. Nerissa here is an example, and there are many other examples on our coming out stories on YouTube channel. Please subscribe. Please keep watching. Keep listening to these stories because they are powerful. It will help you in your own journey. That's a promise. Now, Nerissa, coming back to what you were talking about, your basically transition. I want to understand how that transition happened. Now we're talking about your actual transition as a gay woman, as a queer woman.
Yeah.
How did the confidence come back? And I want to know about how you met your, I won't say the word right now because I'd rather you say it. Yeah, that's a surprise.
Okay. Yeah, a great question, Raga. And I think, for, different people, like you said, have different journeys and different stories. And, mine might not be the same as someone else's. But for me, it took a very long time. And, one of the things that you mentioned, that internal turmoil and me being so angry, like something that since coming up, people have noticed around me. And, my ex flatmate told me first, she said, I feel you're no longer fighting with yourself. Your karma outside, you're no longer fighting with the world because you're no longer fighting with yourself. And it was that just that release that I don't have to be this other person that I don't fit with, I don't have anything in common with other than having the same heart and soul. Nothing about this is me. And even in the workplace, right, that's so important because the more we try to not be ourselves, we're taking away from even, we can't even concentrate at work because there's so much put into how I should not be. But since doing that, slowly I had to find my voice again. For me, like the initial part was just being myself. Now that I was me, then I had to build that self belief. I had to break through all of those limiting beliefs because growing up, people had told me, you'll never be anything, you'll never achieve anything because of how you are, because of your nature. You'll never become anything. And I used to believe that. I used to be like, well, I'm not worth anything. I'm not going to become anything. I'm going to be a failure all my life. So those were all limiting beliefs that I had to challenge. And every time I'd do something, I'd achieve something, and I'd go, okay, I can do this, and I'll try something else. And so that fight in me, it was almost like this. It was like reborn inside. Now I was like, okay, everyone that told me I can't do something, I'm gonna do it. Like, bring it on now, right? And I think slowly that started to shift in me. And once you start living congruently, Raga, whether that's however you identify, I think once we can live congruently with what we believe and our values, that just shifts. And that gives you confidence on its own. And then I was like, I have to back myself now. I have to, like, other people are not going to if I can't do it myself. So that's how that evolved. And then the second part was, how did I meet the mystery person. Well, you know how I said my sister told me to go to this coming out group. It used to be called the coming out group here. So through that coming out group, I met a group of friends, and some of my closest friends now are still from there. And one of those people that I met turned out to be my now wife. And through that, we used to hang out and stuff. And she told me that she liked me, but I was quite early on in my coming out journey at that time. And I was like, no, I'm not here to, be in a relationship or anything. I just need to be me first. So I played hard to get for a long time, but she didn't give up. And I'm so thankful that she chased me. And, I thank her every day. I was like, thank you for not giving up on us, because, she's now the love of my life. We were able to, yep, that's her. We got married in Australia before the laws changed. We got married in 2017. We're still together now. What's it, about nine years? And it was so lovely having family there. My mom and sister at the wedding, her family there. I mean, that was one of the happiest days of my life, because, growing up, so often, marriage, the concept, and you can't be Indian and not have a conversation around marriage at some point, right? And that's one of the other things that drove me to come out, because every card they'd say, when are you meeting Mr. Right? We're praying for you that you meet Mr. Right. And I'm like, I don't want Mr. Right. I don't even want Mr. Wrong. I don't want a Mr. But that the concept of marriage is always with the man. So I never thought that, I'd ever get married. So, getting married to my wife was one of the happiest days of my life, and being able to say, this is the person I love. This is who I want to be with, to walk down the aisle with her, to have friends and family acknowledge that.
So your mom and sister attended the wedding, right?
Yes.
As we can see from, I'm sure we have a photo of it. But how was it? Was it awkward for you to tell them? Was it awkward for them to attend, or was it just smooth and?
Like my mom and my sister, since I've come out, have been my strongest allies. Like they are with me. In fact, my mom had all the tissues ready at the wedding. She absolutely loves my wife. She's like, they get along. Like I have to fight for space in between that. Like she was like absolutely, supportive of everything. She came down earlier to, just kind of be part of that. The ceremony. She was part of the planning. She was, just there to celebrate. She was just like, it was just beautiful to have them there at the wedding, and to be, be part of it. And now, she's like, every anniversary she wishes us happy anniversary. Like we're just a family now. Like we've gone back to India, which was interesting. But we've gone back to India as well. And before we were married, after we were married. So
how is that? So when you cross the border, first of all, when you cross the border, you're married in Australia. In India, there are no marriage rights, as you know. So what happens when you cross the border? Do you become single, or do you still stay married?
Well, very interesting. So the first time when we went back, we were not married then, and all of our close friends knew, this is my partner. But when we'd go to bigger gatherings and, I was like, well, let them think whatever, think she's my friend. It doesn't matter. I'm not like the people that I want to say it to, and they know. The people that don't know. But the second time when we went back, I was like, no, I'm just going, if anyone asks, she's my wife. Like, I'm not going to say she's my partner, or she's, my best friend. We've come a long way to acknowledge the fact that this is now my wife. So if anyone wants to meet us and get introduced to us, I will be introducing her as my wife. If you don't want that introduction, then I'm happy not to meet. So that was my basis of going back the next time. But it's very interesting over there, though, because they're still, I remember we were at immigration, as you go through, and there was no reason for the immigration guy there questioning our relationship. She's got a valid passport. I've got a valid passport. He has no question about questioning how we two are together, but he wanted to dig in a bit more. So at that time he had said, this was before we married. He asked us, who is that? So I said, partner. So he said, oh, partner. So before he got into anything, I was like, she's family. And I was like, that's it. You don't need to ask or wonder why, but they always try to get a bit more information. And, for me, that I don't feel very safe or comfortable. in that, but it is what it is, and things are changing now. This was before 377. I think just after 377. I think lifting that now, there is progress, a lot of progress happening in India. If you think of India now, whereas India my
Yeah.
time and India your time, there is progress. So we have to be hopeful that things are changing and things are moving, but there's still so much work that we continually need to do. And that's why conversations like this are so important, because growing up, you and me never had this. We
No,
never had
absolutely.
any representation, or any, even if there was nobody that looked like us, that sounded like us, that we could, there was no representation. And I think that's why, that's one of the main reasons, even like I wrote the book, because I was like, I want, there to be, if someone wants to read a story of, what someone's life was like, what they went through, how they came out, and what life is now that they're living for themselves, what's the difference, then I want there to be a story for someone to read. And
Sure. Growing
yeah.
Through, right? Your book Growing Through is available on Amazon.
Yes. My book
Yeah,
is called
yeah.
Growing Through How Coming Out Transformed My Life. And yeah, it's available on Amazon and most of the online book sites. It's available in ebook, paperback, hardcover as well. But yeah, that was one of the main reasons I even wrote it, because I was like, growing up, I never had the opportunity. I never had the role models, the people that I would have loved to talk to ask questions of. There was no one for me to ask. So nowadays, if there are kids, if there's youth, even parents, I'm like, ask me what you want to ask. Like, I'll talk to you, but let's keep having this conversation.
It's fantastic. I'm so pleased that we have had you to interact with today, Nerissa,
Thank you.
because everything that you said and everything I relate to as well, because something that I've been through. I hope, and the idea for Nicola and I to set up this coming out series out of India is to make sure that we have role models. Like, I know that everybody's life cannot be have a happy ending, and this is just the
Mm.
beginning, of course, for you as well, for you and Charlie, right? Your
Yeah.
wife. Yeah. So it's just the beginning. But when I say happy ending, is happy ending in your journey of a new beginning. So that's my point, that I've had a happy ending, and it's a long way to go for me. There are lots of challenges and difficulties that we face as individuals, as a couple, and as a community. But our fight is on. And I
Yeah.
think every such story, please pick up Growing Through book of Narissa's. I think something that will be a very interesting book to read. And something, like you said, if you've shared in the book what you've shared with me today, it's amazing. I would love everyone to read it. Parents, friends, family, allies,
Mm.
whatever you call yourselves, please pick up the book. And Nerissa, I'm running out of time. Just one last thing before we end this interaction. Is there any message you want to give to our audience today?
Yeah, I'd love to leave people with a message of hope, Raga, because in my book I end this, and this is something I really believe in, that anything is possible. Anything is possible when you can be yourself, believe in yourself, and back yourself. And I think those three things are so important, especially when the people around us don't see us for who we are. That journey is not always easy, but if you're a young person, if you're someone out there that is looking for hope, it does get better. It absolutely does get better. So hold on, don't give up hope. There are heaps of people around you that love you, that accept you, that want to help you. So reach out for help, and know that just be you. Everyone else is taken. You just be you, believe in you, and back you.
You be you. And I love that you are talking to us about hope, because that's the reason I wake up every morning
Mm.
hoping that things will change. But things will not change unless we make the change. That is important. That's why narratives are important. One story at a time, we will change the narrative, right, Nerissa? And I also
100%.
leave you with hope from Nerissa and Growing Through book from Nerissa. And I've loved this interaction with you. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
sharing and bringing your whole self to our show. And I have to thank Nicola also, who's sitting in the background and doing all the back end stuff for us. Nicola, thank you. And Nicola is the one who's basically curated this interaction. So thank you. We have two partners.
Thank
We
you
have
so
the
much.
Herbal Theory. We have a little gift bag, but unfortunately, you're in Australia, so we'll have to figure out how to. Maybe we'll send it to Kolkata from the Herbal Theory. They are a gifting partner. We have Digital Fix, who is our digital and social media partner.
Awesome.
They've been very helpful and great support for us. And I hope that this helps our audience. Basically, that's what the purpose is. Do write to us at theviewsroom@gmail.com. Thank you for joining in. I am available on all my social handles are at Totally Out Now. Please follow us for such stories. Do subscribe to my YouTube channel, Raga Olga D'silva, and just keep writing to us. Any feedback, any thoughts, any conversations you have, Nerissa will be happy to respond to you. And Nerissa, what is your Twitter handle?
I'm on Instagram as Nerissa.Trindade, and on Facebook as Nerissa Trindade, and on LinkedIn as Nerissa Trindade as well. And YouTube is Nerissa Trindade as well.
I'm reminding everyone once again, remember, closets are for clothes, not to hide your truth. It's very important to remember that. Live your truth, and it is very liberating. I'm totally out now, and I'm signing out now. Thank you very much, Nerissa, audience.